So this particular video is purely experimental. And it's experimental based on something, basically I'm always obviously looking at the lot of fortune and the lot of spirit in any chart. But what I wanted to kind of look at and examine is all of the different names for the lot of spirit and how that might imply, and especially one of the names for the lot of spirit, as you'll see here, is the part of things to come, futurorum, futurorum. So the part of things to come, right? It's the part of the sun, but it's also the par solis. And remember that the sun is connected to divination, the evil eye and the eye in the sky and things of that nature, right? So was wondering about, and also that both the part of fortune and the part of spirit have to do with that which is unseen. So obviously, whatever's in your future is unseen. We don't really know what's kind of coming, fate and fortune. So I guess I'm trying to see if we can see, if we can start to understand fate via this idea of futurorum or what's to come. Another way of looking at it is here, the lot of the absent. So it's what's not seen. So let's just kind of get into what, and then also I've got that this is Alcabisi, and then I've got Vedius Valens here. Let me change that. Maybe you saw the yeah, you did see that. But I've got Vedius Valens here, and it's called demon or daemon, right? And we know that the 11th house is called the good spirit or the good daemon, and the 12th house is called the bad spirit or the bad demon, right? So, but this is the lot of demon. So I thought we would get into kind of what it says it's about, maybe kind of how it's been kind of traditionally used, or what I think it's, or what I think especially Hellenistically, and how the Hellenistic astrologers now are also using it. Okay, so first let's go ahead and start with that. The lot of fortune and daemon have the greatest influence on undertakings and their outcomes. Undertakings and their outcomes. This is what Valens says first. The former gives information about matters concerning the body and concerning work of hands, right? All of the stuff that we've been talking about when we've been looking at it from the medieval perspective. And also, it's from Valens that I got the understanding of using the part of fortune as an ascendant. Daemon and its ruler gives information about spiritual and intellectual matters and about the activities of giving and receiving. So fortune tells us about the body, the physical body, and the work of hands, right? And the kind of work, or what we're like in our work life. Demon, though, tells us about the spiritual and intellectual matters, that which can't be seen, right? What's inside our head, and about the activities of giving and receiving. And then I think it goes on to just say, you're going to look at it from the house it's located in, etc. Right. So then, if we come up a few, maybe 1,000 years or a few thousand years, right? This is, matter of fact, quite a few thousand years. If we come up maybe 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 years, then now they're calling it the lot of the absent. And this lot is called the lot of the absent, and it comes after the lot of fortune. Once again, kind of the same situation. And its proper quality is to signify the soul and body and its being. And it signifies faith and prophecy. We've got the sun ninth house things going, religion, sun ninth house, honoring of God, sun ninth house, and secrets and thoughts and intentions and hidden and concealed matters. This is what I want to look at. Secrets and thoughts and intentions and hidden and concealed matter, and everything of matters which is absent. So what it is that we cannot see. And thus this and how this hidden propensity is contributing to what may or may not be fate. Bonatti, futurorum, right? And immediately after the part of fortune exceeds and is more worthy than all the other parts. Okay, although some astrologers seem to care little about it, which is still the case. So, what does he say? The parts of luminaries precede the parts of others. Wait, this part is extracted in the contrary way, blah, blah, blah. Does it say what it's about? No, not yet. I think we go further. Here we go. The pars futurorum signifies the soul and the body after the pars fortunae and the quality of being of these, and faith and prophecy and religion. So this is right up there with what Alcabisi is saying, and that makes perfect sense, right? Because this is the compendium of all of that earlier medieval Arabic knowledge and Persian knowledge, religion and the culture of God and secrets, cogitation, intentions, hidden things, and everything which is absent, and courtesy and liberality, praise, good reputation, heat and cold. And Abul Masar said that the significations of the pars fortunae and futurorum appear more over things both absent and future than that which is present. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to get at. And I don't know if it's going to come to anything. It may not come to shit. Okay, it may come, or it may come to shit. But I thought what we would do is we would look at four weird guys, four kind of weird guys, or four guys in weird situations, or finding themselves in weird situations, most of which are of their own making. And I chose, of course, our present dictator, mad dictator, Jeffrey Dahmer, Zac Efron, who I don't know if you all know what's going on with that Zac Efron, but there is a rumor going along that Zac Efron is maybe the original or the the apex yacht boy, and that basically he might be involved with elements that are unsavory, and also having financial problems, or prior to this having had financial problems, or maybe indebted to somebody, and has found themselves basically doing the yacht scene, basically whoring themselves out to billionaires on yachts. For that, and of course we know that Zac Efron is a body, very much about the all of his Hollywood career. That's what it's been about. So I thought we would look at these things. Then Jared Leto, who, as you know, I'm currently kind of obsessed with because of how he's used his career as a musician, as the frontman of 30 Seconds from Mars, or whatever it is, to basically facilitate cult status. So let's look at, and of course that would deal with spirituality and Mars and intentions. And then of course, right. So let's first start with Donald Trump. And I'll just show us how to find it, even though they're telling us what it is. It's one Pisces, but we know for the daytime, part of spirit in the daytime is moon to sun, and the part of spirit in the nighttime is sun to moon, which is the opposite of the part of fortune, right? Which is sun to moon by day and moon to sun by night. Now, notice that the part of fortune is at 28. This is such a late degrees of Capricorn, of Aquarius, of Leo, excuse me, of Leo, that the opposition is obviously going to take us to these very late degrees of Aquarius, and onto either side of the cusp, and which is exactly the case here. So we've got our part of fortune, which talks about the body and the kind of work that this person would do. We've got this part of fortune in Aquarius, ruled by Saturn, by the Saturn Venus conjunction here. And then we've got the part of spirit ruled by this Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is the natural benefic. This is not a benefic personality. And I think that's one of the first things to be thinking. And once again, if you are familiar at all with any of my videos, you know that I'm always talking about this concept of functional malefic, functional benefic, that any planet can become functionally malefic or benefic, right? So Saturn and Mars can become functionally benefic. For instance, Mars here rules the fourth and the ninth house. The fourth house is the house of real estate and, well, of homes, of buildings, of anything built on top of the ground, and things above and under the ground. And of course, it also represents homes, and so real estate. He's obviously done very well from real estate. So in this particular case, even though Mars is a malefic and it's showing itself in its malefic glory too, it's also acting as a functional benefic in this chart, partially because it's angular and partially because it's on Regulus, which is giving it extra power. So it's giving it extra power to produce. And it's interesting that Mars is not either of these things, right? Because if it's kind of coming down to character, if we can think of it that way, spirit as character, then or you know, as because or what's inside our minds. I'm always talking about the moon being is what is alive within us, right? And so spirit must be similar. Spirit must be similar, but there's also a hidden aspect of what's to come in your life, right? It's things that are hidden and future. It's not about the present. So let's look here. So Jupiter is the natural significator of wealth and substance, and he's in the second house. So that's the first thing and so one of the main things that we know that's inside this person's mind is how can I and well from how he's demonstrated is how can I enrich myself, right? So the need to enrich is definitely there. There is a venality to the person. Venality comes from Venus, and there's Saturn with Venus. This is the part of fortune. The ruler of the part of fortune becomes kind of like the ruler of the ascendant, who's with Venus. So, but we know that Saturn has the power to corrupt. So we can assume that this Saturn has corrupted Venus to a certain extent. And so maybe instead of her acting as amiability, which we know is not the case with this motherfucker, this Venus is acting as venality. Note also that we've got the Jupiter in Libra in Venus's sign, venality. Then, if you've been watching, because we've been looking at him a lot, if you've been watching this, we know that we've got interesting receptions between the Jupiter and the Saturn Venus, even though they are both well, the Jupiter is if the Jupiter is going direct, he is applying to the Saturn. If the Jupiter is going retrograde, then he's moving away. He's separating, but the Venus is already definitely separated from both Jupiter and Saturn, but there's still these receptions happening. So Jupiter is in Libra, which is the exaltation of Saturn. Saturn is in Capricorn, which is the exaltation of Jupiter, which means that the Saturn is uplifted by the Jupiter, but can also corrupt the Jupiter, right? Jupiter is virtue. This is not a virtuous person, right? This is not a virtuous person. Note also here that the Mars almost directly opposes the part of fortune. So we know that that's showing up in the personality quite strongly. It's on the ascendant. That's showing up in the personality very strongly. But that's showing up. What's hidden is what we're asking, right? So what's hidden is there's a venality around substance because of where it is, in my opinion. There is, and note also that Jupiter becomes the exaltation ruler of the 12th house. And both of these planets are in the 12th because they're within 5 degrees, right? So there becomes a relationship with the 12th. And of course, the 12th is known as the self undoing. Remember, one of the things about him is he's always talking about the biggest, the best. He's always talking about himself or anything he's connected with in superlatives. That's Jupiter, right? Or it's Jupiter, it's Sun too, which is the best, the peak, the top. But also big. He's always talking. We have a big, great. This is big. This is great. This is big. This is fantastic. This is Jupiter. He's always kind of pushing Jupiter onto the situation, even when it's not. Then the other thing that I remember mentioning was Jupiter's in Libra, which is aesthetic. Him saying, the minute I see beautiful, I just start kissing them. The minute I see beautiful, I just can't help myself. I just want to start kissing them, right? So there's this response to beauty also, but it's a corrupted response because of the what's going on with the Saturn, and also because Jupiter is the ruler of the fifth of not just children, but sensual pleasure and delight, and the eighth of mental imbalance, of fear and terror. So he's bringing the underworld of epicataphora, of what takes you down. So that's an important point that maybe that I've overlooked now, or am now, that's kind of giving us an extra dimension I didn't overlook. I'm just seeing this new dimension. The ruler of the spirit is also the ruler of the eighth. The spirit is what takes him down into the underworld. There's an aspect of this person's nature which brings them down into it, and Pisces has no boundaries. And so, one of the things that I've been looking at the Sasha reading, listening to the Sasha Riley tapes, seeing these other things, listening to what Jeffrey Epstein has said about Trump, and how he's one of the worst. Right? How is it? How does that work? One of the worst people in the world has their spirit is ruled by Jupiter. Now, of course, the other side of it is who's the Almutant, right? Who's the Almutant? Because we've been talking about this all this time. Is the Almutant the Jupiter? Because if it isn't, it's daytime. And the Almutant is not Jupiter because Venus has, she's got the exaltation, she's got the triplicity, and she's got the term. And guess who has the face? Saturn. So this conjunction, actually, even though Jupiter is the ruler, and we've already talked about the reception that's going on, and the mixed reception here with Venus, right? He's in her domicile, she's in his exaltation. But then when we get down into the nitty gritty of the dignities chart, we find out that it's these three are making up the entire thing, and that she's the winner. And of course, he's in better condition to operate as the winner because she's with the malefic, but she's still the winner, which means she's going to have just a little bit of a say. She's going to have say in how it goes. The Jupiter's maybe going to have the main say. So you see how we can see how this and that, which we had already kind of put together, are actually making up the entire thing. And we know that sex and power, using sex for power, what we talked about, how what Sasha Riley says, that his thing is to what completely destroy human beings on every level, not just sexually and with violence, but with degradation. Shut up, piggy. That with that kind of degradation as well. So that we have such a depraved, degraded character with with the Jupiter as the major domicile ruler, and then these are the two benefic planets, right? Major benefic, minor benefic, right? Major benefic Jupiter, minor benefic Venus, right? So this is a great chart for seeing that, hey, Venus and Jupiter are not always what we think they are. They're not always benefic. And how does that happen? How does this happen? If what's hidden, what's this hidden part? This is the hidden part. And it's meant to be hidden. Note also that Saturn rules the sixth. Remember that the sixth and 12th are both connected to slavery, right? So Saturn rules the sixth. Jupiter has some kind of thing over the 12th, though obviously the moon rules women. She's the natural significator for women. Venus is one of the other planets that is a female planet, right? This is a female sign. So and Saturn rules the seventh, which also usually connects with sex. Jupiter rules the fifth, which has to do with pleasure. So that seems to be what's going on, what's hidden, and what will shape the future for this person, shall we say. Okay, so let's go to our next point, to Jeffrey Dahmer. So Jeffrey Dahmer, all right, spirit. Fortune is at zero Sagittarius with this stuff opposing Sun and Mercury. Okay, and that stuff's in the eighth and opposing, and then obviously the ruler of, oh no, Spirit is zero Sagittarius. Okay, I was thinking, I was talking about fortune here. All right, so zero Sagittarius, the first degree of Sagittarius, which we know is also Jupiter's term, which means it's Jupiter, it's daytime Sun, Jupiter, Mercury. So Jupiter, Sun and Mercury, Jupiter. So there's no connection between the Sun and Mercury. But let's look at what is it, Sag? So let's look at it. Well, first of all, once again, Jupiter rules virtue. This Jupiter is retrograde and fallen. This Jupiter is retrograde and fallen. This so that it's not going to be particularly interested in it's not going to be particularly interested in virtue. And it's with Saturn, who's also retrograde. It's with its ruler. And Saturn is the ruler of the fourth house. And you see it over and over and over again in these medieval documents. Saturn, the fourth house, represents the house of secrets. As a matter of fact, actually, instead of calling the fourth, eighth, and 12th the water houses, I call them the houses of the houses of the things that we don't necessarily see, right? So, I mean, obviously buildings you see, but you don't see the roots of a tree, right? Because the fourth house is what's above and below. It's called the subterranean house, right? So subterranean, which it feels kind of like epicataphora, which is going down into the underworld. So we've got the spirit with with the ruler of the subterranean house. We've got the ruler, the ascendant, who also ruling the epicataphora and going down into it with it, right on the cusp of the eighth. So there's some kind of fascination. Well, I mean, we're only trying to work with spirit right now, right? But the fact that we've got all that kind of happening, and then this is where the connection happens, kind of, because Venus is separating from this trine from Saturn. So this ruler, the fourth and the eighth together. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. This makes more sense, right? This is a serial killer's chart, and the ruler of spirit would not be. I mean, technically it's in the third, which is what, communication or brothers or siblings or something like that. But really, in my opinion, I think it's, and especially from a whole sign perspective, I think this is giving. What else is going on with it? Oh no, that the square to Mars. It's separating, but there's a square from Mars here. Mars is violence. Who were our people? Who were our people populating the degree? It was Jupiter, it was Sun, it was Jupiter, and it was Mercury. So then it brings us to here as well, right? Which brings us to here because Mercury is applying to the sextile to Mars. So now we've got this new way of kind of looking at what's hidden with this person or or what might be hidden. First of all, the hidden is what this person is about. Hiding, secrets and hiding, right? It's subterranean. What is buried, what we bury, our buried treasure, right? Remember, the fourth house is the house that you look for to find the buried treasure, right? So whatever the treasure is, it's buried in this person's. It's buried as far as this person's psyche is concerned. This is what we don't know, right? There might have been an obsession. Well, remember, Saturn is the natural significator for death, and Saturn rules the fifth here. This is what this person enjoys. So, a secret, this person might enjoy keeping secrets, right? Because ruler of the secrets is with the spirit is with the ruler of the secrets. And remember that Saturn is taciturn. Saturn doesn't talk very much, but Saturn likes labor, right? Saturn likes to labor. And remember all of the processing of the bodies that he would do after killing them, right? So all of this processing, that's Saturnian labor. So, but it's all in secret. And it's all hidden from view. It's all secretive, and then of course it all encompasses sexual taboos and things. When we bring it into this eighth house, it's a sexual taboo. We enter the what is it? We enter the eighth house with with Venus and sex and the senses. But when we get in, it's our skill. We exercise our skill there, right? Because Mercury is there, and what a weird chart. But we can see. But the things I want to bring to account really are secrecy. The fact that Jupiter is not only in the sign of Saturn, but in the exaltation of Mars, violence, right? Which can mean that violence can then be the case. Jupiter is the ruler of the sixth, which is bad. They call it bad fortune, right? Bad fortune, infirmity. So there's an infirmity possibly that's coming in. That's or there might be a sickness in the mind, right? I mean, if we're I'm just and note also that Rahu is there, or that Ketu rather is there. But anyway, but so part of the profile of what's hidden is violence, is something Mars and Aries especially is things that are sharp and loud, right? The loud report of the gun. That would be kind of that kind of thing, or the sharp knife going in and drawing blood. Mars likes to draw blood, right? And then this issue with skill, the sun, Mercury, like looking up all of these interesting things and showing my knowledge and my skill, going with this processing, I guess. But and also maybe in how to get along. But it isn't interesting how the Venus brings us in, but it's the Mercury Sun that make themselves at home down there. And what are the Sun rule? The 11th. And the Mercury rules the 12th, of course, that makes perfect sense, and the ninth. But so that's an interesting thing. The 11th, so the person's hopes and dreams and wishes are in there with the Mercury. Okay, so anyway, that's the ruler, but we saw the rest of the platform or the rest of the profile, shall we say. Okay, next is Zach Efron, who, like I said, another weird guy. It's unfortunate what's happened to Zach Efron because he started out. It always starts out well and turns into a nightmare. Not always, but that's often kind of what happens with people. And I think the most important thing, even if the yacht boy things are not necessarily true, is that he seems to be a prisoner of the shall we say of the image that he's been given. So he's known as that gorgeous. First of all, he was known as kind of the really cute, kind of really really cute, like athletic kind of popular guy that can sing really well. And then he kind of moved into kind of this walking mannequin. He's basically that's what he's become, kind of this walking mannequin. And then, like I said, also, it looks like he has fallen in with bad people who may have coerced him into doing the yacht boy thing. And we don't know if he is or not. I mean, we've seen him on yachts with lots of we're seeing him on yachts with older men and all of that kind of shit, right? So we know that there's something going on. And all of this sounds so mundane and idiotic, like Rona Barrett or Barbara Walters or something, but it's great to work with astrology because what are we trying to do with astrology? We're trying to pin the story, we're trying to pin the symbolism to the story, right? And that's kind of an outrageous story, is that, that that's a downfall of sorts, right? That's kind of a downfall. So anyway, well, we're not, but so let's look at that because we looked at it was Jupiter with the other two. Isn't that interesting? It was Jupiter with the other two. This particular one is his spirit is Donald Trump's fortune. So Saturn is the ruler. So issue. So this points to money. And then look at how it comes to here, to the 12th house. And of course the 12th house is the house of prison, right? That's the house of prisons. And note that he's a Capricorn rising, with Capricorn rising and with the ruler of the ascendant in the 12th. So that means that the Saturn is also the ruler of the body in this chart. So and remember, he's also been having problems with, I think, drinking and drugs, and he's gone in and out of rehab, and those kinds of things. So we can see partially the Saturn Uranus is part of the issue that is going with that, and then also this kind of moon, isn't it? Moon going to the Saturn or Moon Venus, right? So there's oh yeah, that Moon Venus sextile, and it's exact. It's partile but not exact. It's 15 minutes away. And note that they are applying to each other by each other's fall. Watch that shit. If we're dealing with this medieval stuff, we don't have, well, we have lots of stuff to play with, but really pay attention to what planets are giving each other, right? The moon is applying to Venus from her fall. When she gets to her, Venus is giving the moon's fall back to her. That's a sextile, but how good a sextile is that? Do you prefer that sextile to the sextile between the moon in Pisces and Venus in Taurus? No, you don't. And so not only then can we start looking at some of these planets as functionally malefic and benefic, we can start based on looking at these receptions, looking at we can start ranking out these aspects. So let's see who's our. I should actually know. I think it's all Saturn and Moon. It's yeah. It's so 28 Aquarius, 29 Aquarius, Saturn, Moon. Yeah, Saturn and Moon. And what were we just talking about? Moon. So it's Saturn and Moon. Okay, so we're just fucking talking about the Moon. So we know then that there's some kind of well, and also remember that Saturn is the ruler. He's in his joy here. He's within 3 degrees of of the 12th house, so he's in the 12th. That's his joy. So there's going to be kind of a reclusiveness or somehow isolated. That's it. There's going to be a finding themselves isolated off on their own, maybe in a way where they can't ask for help or something like that. But that's kind of what it looks like with him. Like that. The trajectory of his career has gone to a place that's kind of isolated him out into this, like I say, walking mannequin. And then it seems like note that part of fortune is in Scorpio, which is the 11th from the ascendant. And even though it's all of this stuff is technically in the 10th, it the 11th is really put, and it's stuff that basically detriments the Venus. It detriments the moon, right? So there's aspects of this that maybe point to one, maybe false friendship, that two could point to benefactors who don't really have your best at you. Let's look at the Mars. The Mars is in Libra, right? The Mars is in his fall. I mean, is his detriment with the Sun in fall. They're not. I mean, they're not exactly together or whatever, but they're both. And then we've got that Sun Jupiter, and that stuff. The Jupiter is ruling the Saturn, right? So this Sun Jupiter, this Adonis. This is kind of super Adonis kind of thing that is ruling that. And I think that's probably what attracts everybody to him is the Sun Jupiter that disposits the Saturn. I think this person might have social anxiety. He was very intelligent from what I understood. In Mercury, Venus, you often see that high intelligence. Moon and Virgo, so you see the high intelligence, but there's something going on with this person's love life and sex life, right? Because when you've got the ruler of the seventh is in Virgo. The moon is in Virgo. It's applying to Venus and Scorpio, which is already her detriment. And then, see what I'm saying? So you've already got that going on. So at the same time as you have this prison thing kind of happening, you've got kind of how public life what public life kind of does to their ability to maybe be in relationships and what kind. And remember that Venus is this natural significator for the 11th because of amiability among friends, right? And she's in detriment. And oh, and see, remember that there's also this exchange between Venus and Mars. And Bonatti always talks about how the person can't keep their dick in their pants, how this person is very sexual and will have problems with adultery possibly because that combination when Venus is in Mars' sign and he's in Venus' sign usually gives kind of a high sex drive. So there is kind of this, and Scorpio rules the genitals. So there's already kind of like a sexualized aspect to this chart without the person maybe being particularly sexual or maybe with them being compulsively sexual without their being able to be really intimate or something like that. But there's something going on here, and first of all, it points to this. But when we get into the intricacy, then we see also that this is involved. And so that's the secret. I think that as far as the future was concerned, we can see this has happened to him. We can see that this has happened, this kind of isolated out without help. There's nothing that really is going to turn his career around. And he's now, I think, worth 5 million, and it's basically more than likely because of what he's doing on these yachts. All right, Jared Leto. I just love this motherfucker. He's just such a cad, such an opportunist. um, so what's the spirit here in this chart? Oh, look, and Venus is right on it. One of the things that I didn't talk about when we talked about Jared Leto, I was really making a point about the Lord of the Genitor. But one of the things I didn't say about him was that Jared Leto has also been accused of hounding, of being a sexual predator for underage girls, for underage women, and that he hounds, and that he'll be known to have hounded and to constantly text and try to sext and get girls to come to his hotel room, or he's constantly trying to meet. As a matter of fact, somebody wrote in a tweet, they said somebody wrote in a tweet, Jared Leto has slipped into the DMs of every model between 18 and 25, and someone wrote in response, "Oh, he's stopping at 18 for Twitter." So so there's Rahu, right? Rahu is always kind of interested in things that are out of the ordinary, over the line, um, going towards the darkness. Take you away from your principles. What will you do to get what you want? That's a major Rahu thing. What would you do for how far will you go? How deep how deep will you take it to go to get what you want? And with Venus here on the so this is the first one where we've seen a planet on the spirit. So we know that that planet, this Venus Rahu, is going to have a lot to do with how that works out already, right? Then let's see who our people are, who's populating the degrees. Saturn, Mercury, Venus. Oh, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Saturn, Mercury, where the fuck is Mercury? Mercury and Venus, right? So the Venus is already, she's the face ruler, so she didn't have that much power, but she's got some power. She's relevant to the degree, so she's going to participate in it. So she's making up kind of it. What houses does she rule? She rules the ascendant. She's the ruler of the ascendant. So the ruler of the ascendant is on the spirit. So that would, in a lot of ways, in my opinion, that might make the invisible visible, right? That would make some of the invisible visible. One way in which it's made the visible invisible is that inside his mind, he could not be satisfied. This Rahu, remember, the agent of ambition, he could not be satisfied with one illustrious career. He has to have two of them. Saturn's in Gemini. He has to be a Oscar-winning actor and a platinum album, million selling frontman of a rock band. So there's that. There's part of that. But also Saturn, whenever I think of Saturn, and of course note that the Venus is leaving the Saturn and she's received by him, Saturn is a corruptor. Saturn is about control, right? Saturn really likes to control. So there's an element of the need for control, in my opinion, in this person's life. And it's in the first, so it's very much related to the person themselves. Wanting to have control over their image, it's in Gemini, so wanting to have control over discourse. Right? But it looks like there's a need to control others involved in here. And when we were talking about the Lord of the Genitor and how I didn't even notice that the Lord of the Genitor ruled the seventh house, which is the public, which is the house of others. And so that brings us, even though he's not a part of the profile of this degree, that still is something that we talked about before. And of course, Venus naturally is a natural ruler of relationships, friendships, love, sex, all of those types of things. Note that the part of fortune's in the fifth house. Note that the ruler of the fifth is Mercury, right? He's one of them. He's in there, right? It was Saturn, it was Mercury, it was Venus. Saturn, the winner, of course. And then this retrograde. So there's an unpredictability to the persona, right? This would show up. There would be kind of an unpleasant unpredictability. And those of you who were following what he was doing when he was playing, what was it? I forget the name of the movie, but when he was playing Joker, he was giving people unpleasant gifts like a pig and heads of rats and heads of pigs and things of that nature. Well, he said used condoms and then took it back and said that he wasn't. But and remember that Saturn is dirt. right? Saturn is dirt and things that are nasty and dirty and disgusting. And so there would be maybe an interest in things like that, the sewage, the dirt. Saturn is interested in dirt. Saturn likes the dirt. Saturn is dirty. Pigpen in Charlie Brown, right? So there could be that kind of thing going on. Saturn rules what? The 10th and the ninth and the 10th. The ninth is the house of God. The ninth is the house of religion. This person, this person has positioned themselves as a kind of a cult leader for his Club Mars, or what was it? Mars Island and Camp Mars. It was Mars Island. That's what I couldn't remember the last time we were talking about it. Right. So those are the kinds of things that are so there would Venus, of course, obviously is sex, but she's also but all of this stuff is in Aquarius. So I know often that, like, I've got Venus Aquarius, so often it's really what turns the person on is ideas. Same thing with the Saturn and Gemini. So this person really has ideas that they want to disseminate, right? All this, Gemini, Sagittarius, these planets are those signs are disseminators of information, right? So it would and this is about ideals and the beliefs of what the beliefs that we have and how we build the building blocks of our civil of how we organize our civilized life, right? So this person has a lot to say about those types of things and wants to disseminate philosophical ideas, as well as also dominate. There is also to dominate women, dominate the feminine, or and to express creatively, as well. Where's oh, look at also this moon, the moon in Aries, right? The really strong moon in Aries here. That's going on. And in the 12th, remember, women, women are in the 12th. Venus and the moon are women. Moon is the natural significator for women. Venus and the moon are the feminine planets. So interesting that the feminine also will be a focus. And obviously, Venus is sex. Sex would be a focus. And obviously, that's one of the things that he's using. His echelon is primarily made up of women, right? And so that's okay. So that's my little experiment, working with the part of spirit as the unseen future and our possible fate that awaits us.